Hello everyone, today I will be discussing the top 10 most overpriced cars in my opinion. Now these cars aren't necessarily bad cars, the only thing that's bad about them mainly is their price. But obviously if they are bad cars then I will point that out, so let's just get into it. First up we have the Entity MT, available for $2,355,000. Now the Entity MT overall is a pretty solid car if it actually did cost $2.3 million as it has its performance, but it has HSW which adds at least another $1.2 million. And for over $3 million for a supercar that isn't even best of its class with HSW is pretty bad. Pretty much every car that has HSW is a good car, although there's many on this list that have HSW and are overpriced. But the Entity MT is just simply too much money for a non-top class performer. It has decent acceleration, but its top speed is rather slow. I believe that the S95 has a higher top speed than the Entity MT, which is just sad because how are you getting beaten out by a sports car that is like half the price even with HSW? I don't know, the S95 is a way better car than this one. And even in the supercars class, there are much better options for much better prices than the Entity MT. But I will say the Entity MT looks great and I have it in my collection for that reason. It also sounds pretty good, although to me it sounds like a slightly worse T20, but that's just my opinion. And it does have a lot of customization, so the car overall is pretty good, but the price is just simply too expensive. If it was $2.5 million all in with HSW and everything, I think it would be a much better car, but it is just not. Next up, we have the Opel GTAO Stinger TT, available for $2,380,000. Now, some people may be very surprised to see this car on this list because the car is pretty expensive, but you can argue that the performance is pretty good. And I mostly would agree with you. The speed is pretty good, the acceleration is great, especially if you do what GTA Online players call double clutching. It can get an insanely fast start, but the second it sees a corner, this car absolutely starts to fall apart. The Stinger is simply too stiff around corners. It's like you're trying to turn a semi-truck, but this is a pretty good supercar that has pretty good speed, and it's everything but a semi-truck, but once you get into the corners, it starts to resemble one. And it's really unfortunate because this car would be pretty good even for the price because it's not too expensive. It's cheaper than the Entity MT, matter of fact. And it's a much better car, but the Entity MT just has better handling than this car. If you're on a track that doesn't have a lot of turns and is mostly straight, so maybe like an oval, this car would actually do pretty well because it has good speed and you wouldn't need to turn very often. But even on a track that has a medium amount of turns, I would choose anything else other than this. I would choose the Emirates, the Krieger, which are non-HSW cars, over this. Way too expensive in my opinion to have this bad handling. But I will tell you, this car looks damn good. Next up we have the Buffalo EVX, available for $2,140,000. I'm really sad to see the EVX on this list because I was really hyped for the EVX when they first teased it as part of San Andreas Mercenaries, but unfortunately when it came out, it just wasn't so good. This car is very strange. It's electric, which would have you think that it has good acceleration but bottoms out at top speed. But this car is in reverse. It has bad acceleration, but it keeps on going even at higher speeds, which would be good, but that's just not what you want out of an electric car. You want that fast acceleration out of a corner, and then maybe you take the penalty on the straights, but this car does not have that, and it's just too much. And by the way, that price I mentioned at the beginning, that's not including the HSW mods. That's just for you buying the car. HSW would probably add another 1 to 1.5 million, and at that price I just can't see recommending this car to anyone who doesn't have a bunch of money. If you're a newer player or you like how this car looks, but maybe you just want to stretch because you like how it looks, you think the performance will make up, it will not. The performance is just bad, and this car also doesn't handle very well, which doesn't help its case at all. And it's unfortunate because I do think it looks pretty good. It has a decent amount of customization, but it is just simply too expensive to have this level of performance. Next up we have the Virtue, available for $2,235,000. Now, I love how the Virtue looks, but that price tag is just too expensive. This car tops out at around $125, which is just extremely lackluster. I mean, that's what cars in 2013 were doing. The Adder tops out at like $130 or $128, I believe. The Z-Type tops out at like $129. It's just, come on. it's just been too long for a car to top out at that speed. And I know this car is electric and fast acceleration, low top speed, whatever, but it could have a slightly higher top speed, even 135, 140, just to help its case a little bit. The Cyclone 2 does a better job at this, even though the Cyclone 2 does have HSW. Even without HSW, it is a better electric supercar than this. But overall, I would say the Virtue is not that bad if it weren't for that high price tag. If this car was around 1.5 million, I would recommend it to almost everybody, because at that price point, this makes sense. 1.5 million for a new supercar that doesn't have too good performance but is still new overall is a fair deal. But this car is just too expensive, even though it's not that expensive in the grand scheme of things. All in, you're looking at around 2.6 million, which is just too expensive for this car. I will say this car looks absolutely amazing, which does slightly help its case, but it is still a tad too expensive. Next up, we have the Zeno, available for $2,820,000. Now, I actually really like how the Zeno looks. I love how it looks like the SSC Tuatara, which I'm not even gonna go into that, but it does look fantastic. It has a lot of customization options. You can really make this car yours with your own personal touches, and you probably won't see one that looks like yours in a long time because there's just too much variation. But this price tag is just absurd for this performance. The car is way too slidey around corners. If you hit one bump, the thing spins out instantly. The top speed is not that good either. The acceleration is pretty bad. This car is overall just bad. The price tag, even if the price tag were to come down drastically, like 2.1 million, I would still recommend something else at that price point because it just doesn't make sense at all. I'd recommend you to buy a Krieger, an Emirates, and the Emirates is not particularly fast, but it does have better handling, way better than this. Even if it were hypothetically to come down to that price, which it probably will not unless it's heavily discounted or it's at the podium for free, I could just think of a million other options that are better than this. This car simply needs a buff. But Rockstar is not particularly known to give buffs to cars. They will nerf a car if it's performing too good, or they will nerf it by raising its price. And if they raise this thing's price, then this thing is out of the realm of possibility. It would be completely done for, but that's the only way to really salvage this car. It is just an overall bad deal. Next up, we have the Tesseract, available for $2,825,000. Now, I have owned pretty much almost every car in GTA Online, one way or another. Usually, back in the day, I would buy the newest car of the DLC, and then when the next DLC came out, I would sell the previous DLC's cars to have money for the new ones, and that's how I would pretty much have access to every car. But when the Tesseract came out, I just had zero interest in it whatsoever. First of all, it's way overpriced, way overpriced. Its performance is also extremely bad, similar to the Zeno, and to me, it just looks plain ugly. I think the X80 Proto pulls off this like exposed style better than this, and I also prefer the gas engine. I actually did not know that the Tesseract was electric. When I got this car to drive for this video, I was like, this thing's electric? How is this electric? This ought to have a V12 or something. But no, it is electric, which is extremely disappointing because I was hoping it would have a good engine sound or something to salvage or save its case, but it just doesn't. And simply, it is just too expensive. It's $5,000 more than the Zeno, which is 2.8 million, 20,000, and I would prefer the Zeno over this. And that's saying something because I don't really like the Zeno. In my opinion, the Tesseract is just ugly. Its performance is extremely lackluster. It does have decent handling, which helps its case, but its speed is pretty bad. And that damn price tag is just simply too high. Way too high. Unless you're a fan of Batman style cars, I would not buy this at all, even if you had $100 million like me. I actually sold this car after this video. Next up, we have the Tyrant, available for $2,515,000. Now, I just never liked the Tyrant. I think the car looks good, but the proportions are way off. It is way too wide. I got this screenshot of this next to the Phantom from the MLC, and look at the size difference. That's what she said. But I mean, the Tyrant is just so wide. It's absolutely ridiculous. The price tag does not help this case at all. That is way too much money for this car. This thing is just extremely slow, and its width does not help it either. Usually wide supercars like this corner bad because whenever you want to take a corner, corner, you want to find the best angle to take the corner. So usually that means cutting in very close to the rails or whatever is preventing you from leaving the track, but this car is just too wide and the handling is pretty bad. So even if you do make the corner pretty tight, you'll probably spin out once you leave it because this car has pretty bad handling. In my personal opinion, the only way to really salvage this car is the addition of HSW mods, because then at least this car would be fast. Even though it wouldn't have good handling, I'm sure it would at least have speed, which makes up for a lot. But this car is just overall a bad package. It doesn't have a lot of mods at all. Really, you can only do a spoiler and some bumper options, and that's it. It doesn't have good performance whatsoever. It's too wide and the price is just way too high. An overall bad package. Next up, we have the Walton, available for $1,670,000. Now, you also may be surprised to see this truck on this list because that's not that much money in terms of modern GTA Online. I mean, 1.6 million is really not that much. But I think that's only because our standards have gotten so low to where that's seen as not that much money. If this came out in like 2014, that price tag would be absolutely ridiculous, because back then this would probably go for like 700,000. I mean, the Turismo was 500,000, the Zeno was 750,000, the Adder was $1 million, the Cheetah was like 650. Like, supercars were cheap. Imagine this back then being more expensive than the top tier supercar at the time. It just wouldn't be a thing. Even at 1.6 million today, unless you really like old school trucks or you like off-roading or whatever, I would recommend so many other cars to you before recommending you this, because this car does look good. It has a good amount of customizations too, a lot of unique customizations, a lot of unique truck beds that are only on this car, and this truck does look pretty good in my opinion, at least. But in my opinion, this should just be a $600,000 truck. It's not fast, it's not particularly good at off-roading, it's not bulletproof, it's not flying hovercraft. Like, nothing says $1.6 million about this truck. Once again, some people may think this price is reasonable, but once again, I would say that is just simply because our standards have come so far down over time. But luckily for Rockstar, this truck has a lot going for it in terms of cosmetics. Next up, we have the Slam truck, available for $1,310,000. Now, I hate this damn thing so much, it doesn't even get a driving sequence because I just hate it. Now, the price is overpriced, don't get me wrong, but that is just one of the many issues that this truck has. First off, it's obvious that this looks like a tow truck or some sort of thing that can haul cars on it, but when you put a car on it, it slides off right away, which is extremely unfortunate. It seems like Rockstar just doesn't want to give us something that hauls cars. We first saw the idea of a car hauler back when the bunker came out as part of gun running. One of the trailers showed the MOC's back opening, and I believe a Dune FAV was driving out of it. This was a complete lie, and the back does not actually open like that. It opens by you having to go into a black screen and then you go into the back of the MOC. So that didn't work. And then the Wastelander came out and that also didn't work. The car slid right off immediately. And now we have this. It's just such a damn shame that this thing doesn't haul cars on it, because it obviously looks like it's supposed to, and I probably should have put this car somewhere else other than right next to a gas truck. But anyways, I actually think the price tag is not overpriced if it actually served its purpose as a car hauler, but it just doesn't. I think the price is completely reasonable if it served its purpose, but the car just flies off right away and it doesn't stay on, which is just so unfortunate because I've been wanting a car hauler, something to haul around cars openly for so long in GTA Online, and Rockstar just doesn't want to give it to us. Next up, we have the Omnis EGT, available for $1,795,000. Now, the Omnis has a lot going for it. I believe it's the best looking electric car in the game, and there's a lot of electric cars, so that's saying something, even if it is my own opinion. But like a lot of the electric cars, this thing is just slow. Even the acceleration, which once again, going back to earlier in the video, electric cars are known for, this doesn't accelerate very fast at all. The performance is just a complete letdown, and even if this were to just be a little bit faster, I believe that that $1.8 million price tag would be justified. Because for a reasonably fast, good handling four-door car that goes that fast and for that price, I think that would be a pretty good overall package. But the performance is just way too lackluster. I think it's the same same on paper as the Raiden, but I have no statistics for that at all. That's just what it feels like. Driving both of them side by side, I think that they are just pretty similar. They are both relatively slow to accelerate. They both reach their top speed pretty fast, which is not very fast. It's like 120. The price is just way too high, but once again, I do like how the Omnis EGT looks. It has a lot of good customization. I believe it has a unique ski rack on it as well. Ski box, I mean. But yeah, I think if it was just a little bit cheaper with its current performance, maybe like 1.4 million with a trade price or whatever. I don't even know if it comes with a trade price or not. That'd be a pretty good overall deal, but it's just too high as of right now. And that is it, everyone, the 10 most overpriced cars in my opinion. Once again, this doesn't mean that these cars are bad, it just means that these cars are overpriced. Although some of the cars in this video are pretty bad, as you have seen. I'm also feeling a bit under the weather. I have pretty bad allergies as of recording this, so hopefully that didn't affect the video too much. And I will get better soon. Thank you all for watching, as always, and goodbye.